What's up, Rip City? Welcome to the second post-game show that I'm doing on the Portland Trail Blazers. This is the January 5th Blazers versus Bulls matchup. Well, that kind of sucks. The Blazers started off hot. They hit 8 threes in the first quarter and had a 20-point lead at the end of the first quarter, I believe. They shot extremely well, and I don't know where that went in the rest of the game. I was listening to the game on the radio and trying to keep up, so I'm not able to tell offensive, defensive schemes, what was working, what was not working until the beginning of the fourth. And it was just kind of a wasted hot start. I mean, you come out, you get a 20-point lead, you got to be able to protect that lead. And I think there was quite a few things that led to that little issue. One thing that I noticed listening to on the radio was it seemed like the Bulls really started picking apart our drop coverage defense, especially once I got back and I was able to look and actually watch the game. Zach LaVine coming off a screen came right down at Nurk, and that brings Nurk in, and then he just passes off to Thaddeus Young, who wasn't even trying to shoot the corner or the deep shot. He just drive in and pass again with the other help coverage that came to cover Nurk's guy. And Zach LaVine being such an athletic shooting guard and ball handler, it's going to be difficult for drop coverage to be able to take care of that offense. And it was just it seemed like it wasn't going to be able to work. Another thing was the defense just seemed a half step slow in a lot of the game, especially towards the end. They seemed tired, and the Bulls had so much energy, it seemed like, especially in the last I'd say 6 minutes of the game. They just had so much energy, and they just kept coming, and the Blazers couldn't stop them, unfortunately. Another thing, the Blazers just got to hit their shots. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a normal thing when you have such a hot start, and then the Blazers offense just seemed like they hit a wall. No one seemed to be hitting shots, and they were able to keep it close, which was good, but when you have a 20-point lead, it shouldn't be close. You should be able to have at least, in my opinion, you should keep that to at least a +5 for the rest of the game. I mean, basketball is a game of runs. It goes back and forth, but when you open up the second quarter on I believe it's a 13-0 run, that's not really a recipe for success. And I just think that's the defense's fault. I think that's just something you got to take care of. You got to take care of that game, and one of the reasons is you got to hit your free throws. I don't know what the Blazers' free throw percentage was today, but it was not good. I know that Derek Jones Jr., he's so athletic, he gets fouled a lot, and that he's just got to hit his shots. And I think that'll come with time. I think that's something he's going to work on, and I think that's going to be fine. But it was just kind of ugly tonight. I know Dame missed 2, but when you're 9 for 11, not great, because Dame's a pretty reliable free throw shooter. But those are points we needed tonight, and you're not going to put the whole weight of that on Dame. That's not really his fault. But one of the pick and roll offense towards the end of the game had some issues where Dame and CJ would both come off that pick and roll, and they just shoot automatically. They just right off the bat they'd shoot. And granted, they were good looks, they were open shots, and I'm sure they'll hit them towards the end of the year. But when that's not working, in my opinion, you should drive and kick. I saw Dame started doing that, and I think it led to more points on offense. And right off the bat, I got to say that was a good shot by Dame. It was a shame that it didn't end up winning the game, but I thought it was a pretty good shot, running across the court and fading from the right side. That seemed like a pretty difficult shot. But I will say that you have to give the Bulls credit. They came out and they gave a lot of energy. They outworked us on the boards multiple times. I saw Thaddeus Young rip the ball away from Derek Jones Jr., Robert Covington, and then get fouled. And that's just the effort. That's just effort plays. Going in against 2-on-1 against one of the better jumpers in the league, you just take the ball away, and there's not much you can do. And Zach LaVine, and he didn't have the greatest shooting night. He shot 3 for 10 from 3. And as a guy who's a pretty good shooter, he had that really, really clutch shot at the end to put the Bulls up by 3 or 4. And that's just something that you got to take care of. I mean, Zach LaVine, you always have to account for him on the 3. He's always been a pretty good three-point shooter, and he's not just a dunker, obviously. I believe he'll be a pretty good shooting guard for years to come. Definitely above average to all-star level. He's a very good shooter. It wasn't all cons in this game. There were a couple pros, in my opinion. Derek Jones Jr., he's developing offensively. I noticed that they had a couple cuts and they had a couple lob attempts this game, and he had one dunk that was really nice. Came in with 2 hands, switched to the left, and then dunked it down. really, really impressive dunk. And I'm sure that his shot will start falling. He's a pretty good shooter, in my opinion. He's been working on that. You can tell from the beginning of his career, his shooting percentage is just raised and raised every time. And that'll come. You got to take into account this is the 5th, 6th, 7th game. I believe it's the 7th game for the Blazers. He'll get into the rhythm of the offense, and I think that the ball will start moving a lot better. But that's just what I think about Derrick Jones Jr. Robert Covington had a great game, and Carmelo Anthony had a pretty good game. He had a couple big shots. However, I will say that last shot, I don't agree with it. I thought that it was a little rushed. You have 4 seconds. You can at least get yourself square instead of doing a spin while you're shooting. I think it would just help with the accuracy a little bit, but that's just my opinion on that shot. I know it was a little bit frustrating to watch, but, I mean, it's 5 seconds left, and that's just what you got to do. Sometimes it takes you over in the heat of the moment. I'm sure it worked. I'm sure it would have worked if you gave him a little bit of time just to figure it out. And I will say, as bad as some of the defense was, I did notice that they tried more than one defense, and I think that's a good thing. It's a step in the right direction because I know that the Blazers, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, have been running the same drop coverage every time. And granted, for most of the game, it was drop coverage, but especially after Enes Kanter went out. But before that, I noticed they switched to a couple different types of defense with more of a zone and more of a backing out of the drop coverage, a little bit more press. But, I mean, I'm not saying it worked, but just seeing the attempt at moving into a new zone, it's really good to see as a longtime Blazers fan and just getting frustrated by drop coverage and really hoping that they're going to start working on new coverages for that defense, especially having to play shooting guards in the West that can hit from anywhere. So, the eye test award. So, the eye test award, I want to give it out. Deservingly, it goes to Robert Covington. He put up a season high for him, 14 points on 50% shooting. I think it was 5 for 10, 4 of 9 from 3, which is great. That's what we want him to do. 3-and-D player. He had 6 rebounds to go along with that. I don't like giving it out in a loss, but I think he deserves it. Robert Covington played, in my opinion, pretty well and just reliable. He's reliable when you need him and just, takes care of what he needs to take care of. He's always going to work on the defensive end, always going to work on the offensive end to get rebounds, get putbacks, and he's a good player, and I'm glad he's a part of the Blazers team this year. So, yeah, that just my overall opinion on the game. Now, just to a little bit of what I think about the Blazers' future. The Blazers' future, I think, is going to be okay. As disappointing as this game, and especially the last game was, I think that it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be a push in the right direction for the Blazers. Obviously, as a fan, you never want to watch your team lose, but they have the pieces. They have the pieces. There's no more excuses. They have defensive players. They have offensive players, and I think it's going to be all right. Dame and CJ will find their rhythm, and especially in that coming off the 3, like I said earlier, when it's not working, it's not going to work, obviously. But when it's not working, you can't just keep doing it. But once it starts falling, once the 3 ball starts falling for Dame and CJ, it's going to work. It's going to work. They're going to start hitting 3s, and the Blazers will do just fine. So, as unfortunate as it is, Blazers got to take this one. Right now, they have a losing record. Let's hope on the 7th against Minnesota they can come back and get a tie, get a 50-50 record, and then they'll be up the hill from there. Peace out, Rip City. See you next time.